Welcome to Module 2 of the GTFCC Introduction course on the identification of priority areas for multisectoral interventions, PAMI. In this module, we will walk you through key principles to identify PAMI. After completing this module, you will be able to understand why there are two GTFCC methods to identify PAMI. Determine which GTFCC method is applicable in your country depending on your cholera situation. Understand the key principles for decision-making on PAMI. Describe the main steps to identify PAMI. Explain how to plan ahead for PAMI identification. Let's see when to identify PAMI for cholera control and when to identify PAMI for cholera elimination, depending on the country cholera situation. The identification of PAMI for cholera control is for countries with moderate to high cholera transmission. As a guiding principle, those are countries where more than 5% of the geographic units reported cholera outbreaks over the past 5 years. In these countries, strategies against cholera should aim at controlling cholera with an NCP for cholera control. In these countries, PAMI are the geographic units that have had the highest cholera burden in recent years. The focus to identify PAMI for control is on the cholera burden. Over time, as progress are achieved to control cholera, these countries will progress towards an elimination objective. The identification of PAMI for cholera elimination is for countries with no to low cholera transmission. As a guiding principle, those are countries where less than 5% of the geographic units reported cholera outbreaks in recent years. In these countries, strategies against cholera should aim at eliminating cholera. In these countries, PAMI are the geographic areas that are the most vulnerable to cholera reemergence. The focus to identify PAMI for elimination is on vulnerability to cholera. Implementing multisectoral interventions in PAMI for elimination is essential to mitigate vulnerability to cholera reemergence in order to achieve cholera elimination in a sustainable manner. For a country to determine whether it should identify PAMI for control or for elimination, the first step is for this country to determine the relevant geographic level of PAMI in its specific context. This is the geographic level at which multisectoral interventions against cholera set in the NCP will be designed and implemented. The corresponding level is country-specific. Most often, countries select Administrative Level 2, which corresponds to the district level, or Administrative Level 3, which corresponds to the municipality level. Once a country has determined the geographic level of PAMI, the next step is to assess the percentage of geographic units where cholera was reported in the past 5 years. As a guiding principle, if cholera was reported in more than 5% of the geographic units in the past 5 years, it is advisable to identify PAMIs for control in order to develop an NCP to control cholera. On the other hand, if cholera was reported in less than 5% of the geographic units in the past 5 years, it is advisable to identify PAMIs for elimination to develop an NCP to eliminate cholera. Let's see the key principles that guide the decision-making on PAMI. The identification of PAMI for control and of PAMI for elimination follow the same two phases and the same principles to guide the decision-making on PAMI. The first phase is a data-driven phase. At this phase, all geographic units of the country are scored according to a numeric index. This numeric index is used to inform objective decision-making on PAMI, grounded on data. How this numeric index is calculated is different to identify PAMI for control and PAMI for elimination. The second phase is the actual decision-making phase on PAMI, based on consensus. At this phase, stakeholders from different sectors and representing multiple levels and multiple organizations decide in a participative manner and based on consensus on a threshold for the numeric index calculated at the first phase. All geographic units that have an index value above this threshold are PAMI. To decide on the index threshold, stakeholders must find the best balance between the feasibility and the public health impact of the NCP. If the threshold is set low, many geographic units will be PAMI. In that situation, the potential impact of the NCP may be high, however its feasibility may be challenging. On the other hand, if the threshold is set high, very few geographic units will be PAMI. In that situation, the feasibility of the NCP may be high, however its potential impact may be limited. Overall, setting a threshold for the index is about finding the right balance between the feasibility and the impact of the NCP. Identifying PAMI requires careful planning. We will walk you through key considerations to plan PAMI identification smoothly. The PAMI identification process has 5 main steps. First is the inception of PAMI identification. At this step, country stakeholders engage in PAMI identification and get organized for PAMI identification. They also study the GTFCC PAMI identification method and get familiar with the supporting material. Then comes the data-driven phase with the compilation of data and the calculation of the numeric index. This leads to the stakeholder validation phase for decision-making on PAMI based on consensus taking into account the numeric index. This requires a broad consultation of stakeholders and is best achieved in the form of an on-site workshop. After this, PAMI identification is documented in a PAMI identification report. Lastly, a GTFCC PAMI review is requested to receive independent technical feedback on PAMI identification. On average, completing all the PAMI identification steps takes about 6 months. The first month is for the inception of PAMI identification. On month 2 and 3, data are compiled and the index is calculated. On month 4, the stakeholder validation takes place. On month 5, a comprehensive PAMI identification report is prepared. Lastly, on month 6, an independent GTFCC PAMI review is performed. Upon completion of PAMI identification, the next step is to develop an NCP. Capacities in PAMI are assessed for each cholera prevention and control pillar, and priority gaps are identified accordingly. This then serves to identify strategic objectives for each cholera prevention and control pillar and design operational plans in PAMI accordingly. In addition, countries which consider implementing preventive OCV also have to develop a multi-year plan of action for preventive OCV. PAMI identification should be carefully planned in order to ensure smooth articulation with these next steps. Let's illustrate this with preventive OCV. As we have seen, PAMI identification usually takes about 6 months. Developing a multi-year plan of action for preventive OCV in PAMI also takes about 6 months. There are strict deadlines for countries to submit their multi-year plan of action for preventive OCV. As a result, PAMI identification should be initiated about 12 months before the preventive OCV submission window targeted by the country. This requires careful planning and anticipation. As we wrap up this module, here are the important points to remember. PAMI identification for cholera control is for countries with moderate to high cholera transmission. As a guiding principle, these are countries where cholera outbreaks were reported in more than 5% of the geographic units over the past 5 years. PAMI for control are the geographic units with the highest cholera burden in recent years. PAMI identification for cholera elimination is for countries with no to limited cholera transmission. As a guiding principle, these are countries where cholera outbreaks were reported in less than 5% of the geographic units over the past 5 years. PAMI for elimination are the geographic units that are the most vulnerable to cholera reemergence. Decision-making on PAMI is achieved by consensus among country stakeholders using a numeric index to guide the decision-making. PAMI identification usually takes about 6 months to complete, which requires careful planning. Before moving on to the next module, we encourage you to take a short quiz. There are 4 questions in this quiz. Question 1. In a country, over the past 5 years, cholera outbreaks were reported in 27% of the geographic units. What is the best approach in this country? A. This country should identify PAMIs for control and develop an NCP to control cholera. B. This country should identify PAMIs for elimination and develop an NCP to eliminate cholera. The correct answer is A. Since cholera outbreaks were reported in more than 5% of the geographic units over the past 5 years, this country should identify PAMIs for control and develop an NCP to control cholera. Question 2. In a country over the past 5 years, cholera outbreaks were reported in 1% of the geographic units. What is the best approach in this country? A. This country should identify PAMIs for control and develop an NCP to control cholera. B. This country should identify PAMIs for elimination and develop an NCP to eliminate cholera. C. Cholera is no longer a concern in this country. Investing in multi-sectoral interventions would be dispendious. The correct answer is B. Since cholera outbreaks were reported in less than 5% of the geographic units over the past 5 years, this country should identify PAMIs for elimination and develop an NCP to eliminate cholera. Cholera remains a concern and a threat as long as vulnerability to cholera remains. Question 3. How is the list of PAMI determined in a country? A. Automatically based on the value of a numeric index. B. With qualitative discussions and negotiations among political stakeholders. C. Based on consensus among stakeholders taking into account a numeric index to guide objective decision-making. The correct answer is C. The list of PAMIs is determined based on consensus among stakeholders taking into account a numeric index to guide objective decision-making on PAMIs. Question 4. This is the last question. How long does it take on average to complete PAMI identification? A. 6 weeks. B. 6 months. C. 12 months. The correct answer is B. From inception of PAMI identification to completion of a GTFCC PAMI review, on average, PAMI identification takes about 6 months. We have now completed this module.